What's up, Dreamland babies? The Dreamland you picked from the orchard is Humanoid Encounters. My Humanoid encounter was with a Melon Head. Submitted by Average Saw. I know what you're thinking. Melon Heads? I understand. Melon Heads aren't exactly the most famous cryptid. But in Northeast Ohio, the Melon Heads are a local legend. However, the Melon Heads are mostly an excuse for teens to get drunk and go to the woods. It's a safety hazard, so it's understandable why the cops try to stop people from trying to find the Melon Heads. Despite that, teens still say that it's because they're trying to cover something up. My friends, Darren, Brian, Lucas, Mark, and I decided to have a Friday night of fun by going to the woods to find the Melon Heads. We had to evade the cops, but that added to the fun of the night. When we arrived, Brian commented on how creepy it was. He was met with the normal high school insults. We gathered our flashlights and took off into the woods. We were all just having fun, not really caring about the Melon Heads. As we walked, we could hear rustling in the bushes beside us. We all turned our normal-sized heads to see. Darren shoved the smaller Lucas near the bush, forcing him to see what it was. The scent of something dead began to form in the air. Lucas pointed his flashlight into the bush, and saw a dead opossum. He commented on how gross it was, and we kept moving. All throughout our nighttime stroll, we tried to scare each other by saying things like, "What's that?" or "Does anyone hear that?" After about 5 seconds of silence, we would all break out laughing again. Eventually, Brian shoved Mark after he tried to scare us. Mark lost his balance and tipped over, hitting the forest floor with a quiet thud. We all began speed walking away from him, laughing. After a few seconds, Mark screamed. We turned back and all flipped him the bird. He got up and ran over to us. He told us that he saw a Melon Head standing behind a tree. None of us really believed him, and we all just laughed at his claim. He seemed eager to leave, but didn't want to venture through the woods alone. Later, I began to worry about Mark. He kept abnormally quiet. If this was a joke, then surely he would have told us by now. I still shook it off, like an idiot. Strangely, we saw more animal corpses. They were mutilated, and smelled awful. Eventually, it got so strong we had to resist the urge to puke. And then, it was gone with the wind. Confused, we kept on. We began seeing strange sharpened sticks and rocks on the trail. I wonder how dense I was back then. Ignoring all these strange things? Eventually, we got back in the laughing spirit. We were still a little unnerved, but nothing that laughter can't fix. The trail seemed normal from there on out, but Mark was still nervous. Darren and Brian were slapping Lucas in the back of the head, so he ran up about 10 yards in front of us. As he did that, I watched as Mark's size grew huge. He tried to call out to Lucas, but then Lucas paused. We all ran up to him. We were greeted by the sight of some sort of house made out of sticks. The house had dead animals inside. We were panicked now. We looked back, but we saw one of the Melon Heads cross the trail. One peeked out at us from behind a tree. We were all athletic kids, so we ran as fast as we could out of there. I knew we were being tailed. We ran into Darren's car and shut the doors. We didn't even bother buckling up as we sped away from the spot in the forest where we were. We went a little too fast, as a police officer pulled us over. We were happy to see another human, nonetheless one with a gun. He opened our window, and saw our scared faces. He seemed worried at first, but then had a smug look on his face. He knew we were looking for the Melon Heads. He thought that we had heard some noise and got scared. He didn't listen to us. Was he not hearing what we were saying? After we had calmed down, the officer heard a noise behind him. We were now scared out of our wits. The officer looked at the spot in the forest from which it came and told the person to come out of the woods. 5 seconds later, he had his gun drawn. He was now yelling at the person to freeze. Then, a small sharp rock flew in and lodged itself into the officer's forehead. Blood splattered our window. We sped off. I decided to brave looking back, and I saw something I'll never forget. A melon head, standing over the officer's body. It brought out some sort of rock dagger, and began cutting off the officer's limbs. I turned back now. The local newspaper reported on the missing officer. Although they never found his body, my friends and I already know what happened to him. We never told anyone this story, and I only bring it up since I saw something that caught my attention in the news. The bodies of 3 teens showed up in the forest yesterday. All of them had been hacked to oblivion by some sort of stone weapon. Encounter number 2, 2 for 1, more stories from me, both happened at night while I was sleeping, or trying to. Submitted by Jays. Story 1, when I was younger I had sleep paralysis a lot. And I stayed at my grandparents a lot and slept in their living room. Now, they are Christian and kept crosses and holy artifacts. But that didn't stop whatever this was. An entity poured out of the wall and was completely dark, almost viscous and completely opaque. It came out of the wall in a weird elongated pole shape with its head first. At first it had no limbs, but then a huge eye opened and it was looking right at me. And then slowly, another eye. And then another. And then a large mouth just slowly trailed up its body and opened up, revealing a fuck ton of teeth. And the eyes kept coming, and more mouths. And then 2 long spindly arms came out of the wall. And 2 legs. It stood about 9 feet tall and just hovered its head around me. I felt this aura where I couldn't move, couldn't breathe or even cry. I was completely immobile as it moved around the room with its body, keeping its head on me, not unlike how birds have a stabilized neck. I passed out and had a dream about it. It spoke to me and gained a more humanoid form, but still was massively tall this time, even taller in my dream. And where it looked skeletal and spindly when it first appeared, it had flesh in my dream, but it was a pure shadow figure just draped in eyes and mouths. It spoke to me in another language, but I understood it, somewhat. I didn't understand and was fucking scared. I was shaking in the dream, but 9-year-old me worked up the courage to ask who it was. It told me, and said its name is Strafe. And then it entered my body and it hurt so fucking bad I woke up screaming and sweating. I remembered this 11 years later after making up characters, and I ended up drawing it perfectly. Then the memory came back and I ran to the computer in a panic because I remembered the name and I looked it up. It was some form of Celtic and it means either darkest secrets or deepest reddening. I haven't had any encounters with Strafe since, but it is one of my characters now. And for some reason, I'm really good at making up and understanding some Celtic names now. Edit. It turns out it was Irish. Actually, you can find it on Wikipedia simply by typing Strafe. Story 2. This happened when I was 26. I had just moved into an apartment complex with my ex, who I was dating at the time. We had just finished setting up and then laid down for the night. But we couldn't sleep. It was really hard to for some reason. We just laid there until we started passing out and I turned out the light. Suddenly, I was dreaming about the room and it was like there was light but all murky. And then I heard her scream, "Oh my god, the funkin' closet." And I whipped my head around and there were huge black tentacles coming out of it. I panicked and it was like I was awake but also dreaming, and I got the funk up in a sleepwalking-like state and managed to open my eyes. They were still there. I panicked and flipped the light on and it just slowly faded away. Then I felt a chill and looked behind me and she was awake and had a look of terror on her face. "Did you just?" "Yes. Yes." Not only had we seen the same thing awake, but shared the same dream. We didn't sleep that night. We found out later there were people messing around with summoning spells and decided to summon Leviathan aka Cthulhu. Glad I don't live there anymore. Encounter Story 2. The Ohio Screecher, submitted by Din. I'm an Australian, but have family in the States. 4 years ago, December 2015, I was in Ohio for Christmas, staying with my sister. My sister, her husband, we'll call him Jordan, and I were driving back to her house from a movie, and were pulling into her driveway when we heard a high-pitched screeching sound come from outside. away from the car. Assuming it was a bat or something, we all got out thinking nothing of it. But then we heard it again. It was around the time the sun was setting, but the noise was too low to the ground to be a bat. It sounded like it was coming from pretty close by. Now, the noise wasn't unbearably loud or anything, but it was uncomfortably high-pitched, like higher than anything I've ever heard. So by this point we're all out of the car. We hear it like one more time before Jordan goes over to the side of the house where he thinks the noise is coming from. He kicks some bricks around, picks up a couple of tiles, before we see it. Please understand. The following description may be slightly inaccurate, as it has been 4 years. But I swear that what I saw was actually there. Both my sister and her husband saw the same thing. It was vaguely humanoid. It was only about 2-3 feet tall, stark naked, bipedal, running away from Jordan towards us. Its head was massive compared to its body, and was semi-translucent. You could see big veins all over it. It had beady black eyes, and I didn't get a chance to see if it had any genitalia. Upon approaching us, my sister screamed. I instinctively jumped back, and it changed course and ran onto the road. It ran behind the house across the road, let out another screech, and that was the last we saw of it. Jordan called the police when we got inside. They didn't believe us. All 3 of us remember the event quite vividly. Has anybody from around Ohio seen anything similar? Edit. It's been suggested that I might have seen a baby owl. To address this, I looked up various images and videos of various baby owl species, and I can quite confidently say the thing that I saw does not match, in appearance or behavior. That's not to totally rule it out as an option. It has been 4 years after all. I'll contact my sister and see if she has a different opinion, but at this point in time I don't think a baby owl is a match. Encounter Story 3, My First Skinwalker Experience. Submitted by Pudding Salesman. So this happened when I was 15 and out hunting with my father and one of his friends from work. We'll call him Frank for the purpose of this story, who was a lot more experienced with hunting than we were. It was an archery javelina hunt nearby to Crown King. We got pretty lucky coming up on a squadron of javelina as we were driving to our campsite, so we stalked them for a little while and Frank managed to get a shot on one but lost it in the brush after following a blood trail for a few hours. After our failed attempt of searching, we made our way back to our designated campsite and set up camp. It was around 3 in the afternoon, so we decided just to call it a day. That night I laid in my sleeping bag with my father as Frank slept in a separate tent next to ours. It was a quiet night, which was to be expected since the deserts of Arizona are usually very quiet. I woke up around what I would assume to be like 1 in the morning, hearing walking around our tent. Figuring it was maybe a javelina or maybe even a deer, I just laid there listening, waiting for it to go away. One sound broke the silence though and scared the schnit out of me. Clear as day right outside our tent you could hear a loud back, like someone yelling for someone to back away. It was aggressive and it caught the attention of my father, who stayed quiet. The silence resumed again, and maybe 39 seconds later, almost like a recording on a tape recorder, we heard it again, back. In different circumstances we would have walked out to see what was going on, but everything was too quiet. No struggle like a guy fighting a man or animal. Just him yelling back. This continued for maybe another 5 minutes, him occasionally yelling again, but soon the yells got quieter and we knew the man had walked away. I didn't sleep at all the rest of the night and just laid there in silence, looking at the zipper to our sleeping bag, half expecting someone to start to unzip it. Thankfully that never happened. It had to be an hour before someone finally broke the silence. It was my father. What the funk? We didn't leave the tent till we could clearly see the sun in the sky before we heard Frank exit his tent before saying the coast was clear. Him obviously being awake from the whole incident, he looked just as shaken up as us. We started a fire and my father drank some coffee and we just stood there in silence, still trying to comprehend what we had just heard a few hours ago. Frank had finally piped up about it. I saw it. Funker had to be 7 feet tall. Unlike our tent, Frank's tent was more for summer and made for a better bug net than a tent. You could clearly see out the top since it was nothing more than a visor. That was how he saw it. After a little bit of thinking, we decided to end a hunt there, seeing how I was pretty shaken up by this and really didn't feel comfortable about being out there. A few years had passed and I am 18 at this point, and my family and Frank had gotten together to talk and hang out. It was at this point he had told me something he hadn't said on the trip, trying not to scare me. He said that when he saw it, its face was pale white, like computer paper white, was at least 7 or 8 feet tall. If you have a strange or scary humanoid encounter story and want to share it, email me in the link below, thanks. Also, I would like to ask you to become a Dreamland baby, and be a patron. If you can't make a donation and still like the Dreamlands you pick from the orchard, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all for your help and support. Peace out, Dreamland Orchard in.